a little bit about the whole With Me concept. Is it a business that you wanted to start, or is it a community service or a not-for-profit initiative?
Well, the big thing is, like you said earlier, a lot of people had experienced loneliness throughout COVID and uncertainty, and I wanted to introduce activities.
Why countries like Australia and other Western countries are struggling so much with these two things, mental health and loneliness, and how initiatives like yours can help.
Mental health's a tricky one because I think the more you know, the more you worry about things. I was never really exposed to issues with anxiety when I was younger.
What are some of the things do you think we need to focus on just to make sure we build a similar community like you have here in Canberra?
I think frequency is a big thing in regards to like your cadence of when you can join things. I think being too accessible, people take it for granted.
Hello and welcome to The Boss. I'm Amer Qureshi. Thank you for joining us. This is The Boss coming to you from down under. Yes, Canberra, Australia. And you know, हमारा इस पॉडकास्ट में एम होता है कि आपको ऐसे लोगों से मिलवाया जाए जो अच्छा काम कर रहे हों, सोसाइटी के लिए कोई पॉजिटिव कंट्रीब्यूशन कर रहे हों, इम्पैक्ट क्रिएट कर रहे हों, पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट। तो आज की एपिसोड में भी हम आपको एक ऐसे ही शख्स से मिलाएंगे, जैक पीनो, the founder of Walk With Me in Canberra, Australia. एक बहुत ही अच्छा इनिशिएटिव उन्होंने शुरू किया था to encourage people to get together and walk together, share their problems, discuss ideas, or sometimes not speak at all and just walk and enjoy the natural surroundings of our beautiful city, Canberra. Zak is a young person, but he's making a big, big difference here in Canberra, Australia. और इस वॉक विद मी को हम पाकिस्तान भी लेके आ चुके हैं. We've done some walks already and 2026 में और भी walks करने का इरादा है. I hope you'll enjoy my conversation with Zak. He's a young, inspirational, and a very, very hardworking young man. So join me as we talk with Zak Pino from Walk With Me. So joining me on the Boss podcast from Down Under is my good friend Zak Pino. Now, I've already done the introduction for Zak. मैंने आपको Zak के बारे में बताया भी है, what a enterprising young person he is. So we're going to now dive into our conversation and talk to him about the many things that he's doing, including Walk With Me and all of the other initiatives he started. So Zak, welcome to the Boss Podcast. It's good to have you on it.
Thank you for having me, Amir. It's nice that I get to do this with you.
It's a real pleasure, actually. And, you know, so I've already told the audience about your first initiative, which was Walk With Me. I know it started during COVID when people were feeling down and out. Australia particularly had very strict rules. You were not allowed to leave the house for hours and hours on end. And it created a nice opportunity for people to interact and meet each other. And all of us were a bit lost during COVID, as I'm sure you remember. But what gave you the idea and the inspiration to do something like this? Because, you know, you're a young person, you were just finishing university at the time. You could have been working for the corporate sector or some consulting firm. Why did you choose to come up with such a thing like Walk With Me? And first, maybe you could actually tell a little bit more about the whole thing.
So Walk With Me, the inspiration actually started with walking with you around COVID. So you were one of the few people that I used to walk around Lake Burley Griffin with when we had to walk in that clockwise rotation
Yes.
around the lake, and we could only walk with one other person. And I think you were one of the few people that would put up with me so early in the morning. And then I figured I was getting a lot out of it, especially talking to someone that used to employ me. And I could pick the brains of people that I aspire to be like, and also I would like to learn from so that I can reach my personal and professional goals. Whilst doing this, I noticed a lot of other people started contacting me for walks because they were hearing what I was doing. And then when the COVID restrictions lifted, I figured rather than doing 20 different walks a week with one person, why don't we just do one big walk and kind of showcase what I'm getting from all these walks and what other people can too. And I mean, you and I talk about it all the time, the amount of jobs people have gotten by meeting you and meeting other people and relationships that have started from it. And I don't like using the word networking, but it's a form of networking without having to network. And you build your own network of relationships of, you know, who you enjoy spending time with. But another beauty of walking is you don't know who you're talking to because you're walking in activewear. So the whole facade of, I guess, the importance of seeing someone in a suit or like at work and there's a hierarchy, that's all gone. It's an even playing field. Walking is also accessible. No one really cares how fast you walk or how slow you walk. No one talks about it. And it's exercise as whilst also building relationships. And I think in Western cultures too, like alcohol was that thing where people would build relationships on. The issue is, especially me, growing up, the friends that you build relationships with whilst drinking alcohol are not the same relationships that you would maintain if you were sober.
Yes.
And so you realize that was more of a mask of like what the relationship was truly like. So COVID made me realize, like my parents were uncertain with what was going on. And never in my life have I experienced a period of my life where my parents couldn't tell me like what we're going to do or what happens next. And so with that shared mindset from everybody, the unknown, it's like, all right, this is what we have. This is what we can do. Let's walk and talk together and deal with the anxiety and whatever it is that we're going through. And a lot of us go through the same experiences. It's just kind of like looks different.
Yeah, we're going to dive a little bit more into a couple of key things that Australia has been experiencing, and particularly amongst young people and also internationally. I think the same patterns we see emerging. But so over time, what has happened from what I can see, and since I come and join your walks from time to time, even now, you built a very nice community. It started with, I think initially there used to be 4, 5, 6 of us who would walk, and then it grew to 20. And I think now some of your events are having several hundred people attending at the same time.
Yeah, so it was 4 or 5 people usually at the start of Walk With Me when it was a men's focused initiative or community. And then we moved to segregating women and men, providing space for women as well, because women wanted to have the same space. And then I realized we need to coexist. And so why can't we do it together? And it grew straight away. So I think our first walk where we had men and women, we had 120 people join us. And then now, as you said, the smallest event holds 50 and the largest holds 100 plus.
Excellent.
Through a variety of different activities.
If we talk a little bit about the whole with me concept, it started with the walking, then I think you introduced things such as yoga, there is cook with me, and probably many more things to come. Is it a business that you wanted to start, or is it a community service or a not-for-profit initiative? What is the motivation or the business model behind this?
Well, the big thing is, like you said earlier, a lot of people had experienced loneliness throughout COVID and uncertainty. And I wanted to introduce activities that could cater to everybody. So everybody walks, whether you like it or not, it's entirely up to you. People want to try yoga or active yogis. Yep. There's also an element of mindfulness with yoga. So again, kind of stems back to the mental health, being calm and like bringing people together. And cooking, coming from an Italian background, cooking is embedded into the culture of like bringing people together and sharing meals and sharing recipes. And it's a generational thing within my family. And so that's where the inspiration had come from those 3 communities. In regards to the model of the business, charities, the landscape of charities in Australia have relatively remained the same for so many years. And people have less disposable cash these days. So the models aren't changing with it. And you're starting to see the charities are now like taking hits because they depended so much on this business model of donations. And what I've learned, and the beauty of where I am at the moment, is that I'm still at the ground level as a charity. So I know what people can spend money on, what they're willing to spend money on, and what they're willing to buy into as well. And the idea is I just wanted to create an environment that I would want to be a part of, but isn't pushing me to be a part of. So it's kind of like an open door policy, which is like what my parents have always instilled in me, is to be open with everybody and help everyone as much as you can, where you can. And that's the premise of the communities within With Me. And I'm someone that gets nervous meeting new people. And the premise is everything starts with you. So any change in your life starts with you. Our relationship starts with you. Everything that you do starts with you. Like you are the one dependency that will never change in anything you do.
That's very interesting what you're saying, because what tends to happen in our lives is we're very quick to blame everything on someone else rather than taking responsibility or ownership. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's very powerful knowing that anything you want, is like, it starts with your idea, your actions, and like your motivation to do it. And the charity landscape changed, and I think charities are very important because they raise awareness and they provide spaces for people, things, and animals that need the attention, need the assistance. And I noticed a lot of charities are really struggling. So I wanted to create a business model where essentially the members, the community members, attendees, they're like shareholders essentially, because it works off them. Your participation increases participation. You showing up creates awareness. It's not the marketing, it's not the science, not who we work with, it's the people. And I wanted to create a model where it's not dependent on donations, it's dependent on like participation. So it will only work if people show up for one another.
Yes.
And so that's like, I want that to be the nucleus. And if that's the case, I believe like it will never die because people will show up for one another all the time. And like, we've been more disconnected than ever, even though there's a level of convenience in our lives now that we've never experienced. And yet we don't take advantage of that, or we take it for granted because like, oh, we know it's there, so we'll use it when we're there. But we disassociate so quickly from one another and we disconnect. And that's why I think like the fundamentals of mindfulness, exercise, and eating and cooking are such a great way to begin bringing people together.
Yeah, so I wanted to dive in and delve a little bit deeper into what you just said. During COVID, in countries like Australia, the concept of mental well-being and mental health really became important. And everyone was focused and worried about other people's mental health as well as their own. And then recently, when we were having a conversation, you said the next big thing in Australia, the next big epidemic, at least in Australia, is loneliness. And I suppose the two are somewhat related. Tell us a little bit more about why countries like Australia and other Western countries are struggling so much with these two things, mental health and loneliness, and how initiatives like yours can help.
Mental health's a tricky one because I think the more you know, the more you worry about things. So like, I was never really exposed to issues with anxiety when I was younger, but as I became more aware of what I was allowed to be worried about, I would pigeonhole myself and compartmentalize it into thinking like, okay, I have anxiety with these things, I have health anxiety, therefore I'm stressed. Whereas when I was younger, what I didn't know didn't hurt me. And I think like that's where ignorance is completely bliss with mental health. Not to say that it's not okay to feel everything. I think you should feel all your emotions and not run from them, but also realize like it's a part of life of experiencing every emotion that you can. The loneliness is the kind of a byproduct of one another. If you're lonely, you experience like some issue with mental health. Some people like to be alone, but it's different of like not having the option to be alone and you're lonely. And then having poor mental health can make you lonely because you start to isolate yourself and try to remove yourself from what's going on. So they can kind of cause each other to happen. The purpose of With Me, of like combating loneliness, is initially Walk With Me. The walking group was designed for mental health, to walk and talk, to get men to speak about things that they're going through. Can it be shared between generations and whatnot? And then I figured there's so much messaging around it's not weak to speak within Australia and to speak your mind. I'm not seeing the stats change. Like, we're just harping on about the same issue. Whereas I've noticed that if you partake in activities that are new to you or something that you enjoy, you tend to kind of forget about how you feel and become engrossed in the action or the benefit that you're receiving from it, or excited about new relationships that you're making. And that's why I shifted the concept of mental health, and rather like, let's bring people together. Like, if people are less lonely and happier, we can become more inclusive, as a country, as a world. And then what happens? You know what I mean? Like, if inclusivity isn't a problem, what are the problems then? And I figured by the fundamentals of, we build relationships over food. Every culture shares their food. It's like the one thing everyone's proud of. So like, being proud about food is an amazing thing. We all have to eat. We all have to walk. Everyone can walk. And those who can't walk, like we've had people come in wheelchairs and be pushed around. Like, then there's inclusivity of what we're looking for. It's the same with yoga. It's a mindful practice. It has abundance of history that's shared between our instructors, but also if you haven't tried it, it's the perfect way to try it because there's a low barrier to entry. It's a turnkey project. You don't need to invest in a mat. We provide those things for you. And so rather than asking people, do you want to come? is what's the objection to say no? And if you can limit the objections to saying no, why you can come, then you're making the choice to be lonely. It's not because we don't offer what it is that you'd like to do, or like we're not doing it the right way. And so I try and perfect, I guess, people's experiences by, if you come alone, we know that you come alone. we have all the data. We highlight you. When you walk in, we introduce ourselves to, we know you come alone, and we introduce you to people that have come before. So we really make a big effort on making sure that if it's the first time you've come alone, you're not going to be left alone. Because I've been to millions of events where I've been under the assumption I'm going to meet people. No one said hello. I'm too nervous to say hello. And so I blame the event, but then I also haven't taken advantage of the situation where there was an opportunity to meet people, but there wasn't a way for me to integrate myself without overthinking it. Whereas we do all the thinking for you.
Yeah, no, that's very good. So you feel welcomed the moment you sort of attend one of these events. So loneliness, mental health are obviously a big issues for most societies, and Australia is no different. And your, let's call it a movement, community building that you've started is really gained traction in Australia, particularly in Canberra. You've had lots of interest from other cities. Do you see this mindfulness and walking kind of activities going out of Canberra, or are you able to take them out of Canberra and expand? And we'll talk about Pakistan, where I know we've had our first 3 walks already, but let's talk about Australia. Do you think your movement can grow beyond Canberra's borders?
I would love to. I think Canberra is one of those places where if you can make it work in Canberra, you can make it work anywhere due to the size of the population. But also Canberra is very tight-knit, so it's all about building relationships. And the loneliness that people experience in Canberra, it's just magnified when you go to places like Sydney, Melbourne, and other places around the world because of the size of the population. So I think there's a huge need for it. We have spoken to people in Sydney about running yoga sessions in Sydney. Again, finding a commercial kitchen that can host 40 people and we can have access to on a regular basis in the cities would be hard, but not impossible. So I do think there's a huge need for it. And the communities are growing. Events, they're all growing industries. We've been deprived of them for 2 to 3 years. So like this is what people are eager to get into, is these environments where people can rock up and do the activity. There's no thinking involved. There's no investment. The only investment is their time and their willingness to be a part of it. Other than that, that's all they need to do. So I see a huge opportunity in the Australian market, particularly in US and Europe. They're far more open to these things than Australians are. That's the feedback that I received. And I think if you can engross the activities into everyday life where it doesn't feel like it's an add-on, much like, the gym and cooking, you have to do it, then it just becomes part of the fiber of their being. It's part of the weekly routine. There's no second thought. It's, I'm going to cook with me on this Friday. We're going to do gnocchi next week. We're going to do tiramisu. The weekend, we're going to do curry. We're going to do paella, whatever it happens.
That sounds good. Another thing I just want to ask you is, I know we've talked about the younger generation and you yourself are still quite young, but your community, and since I've met many of the people in your community, there is no age limit really. I have come across people who were in their 20s, maybe even teenagers, and then right up to people who are, much older. In Australia, we don't use the term old, it's just older. And why do you think there is such an interest in Walk With Me and these activities among such a broad range of our population?
I think there's no age where you're not lonely yet. And like we talk about it, you and I talk about it all the time. Like you go through different chapters of your life and you're constantly dealing with new challenges that no one can prepare you for, but they can tell you about. And I always talk about it with my dad. And it's interesting because hopefully that I have the same problem one day. But the older you get, the more kids become more sufficient. You know what I mean? They become more independent. They lean on you less, and then you start to retire from work. And then what happens? Like, what do you have to worry about? It sounds strange, but life's good when you have things to worry about and fix. It's when there's nothing to worry about. Finding purpose is the tough thing. And I think that's where the older generation come into it. Is a lot of them have had kids. They live in different cities. They've got their own families. They see their grandkids once every month and whatnot. And then they're looking at retiring. And then so what happens is that 40 hours a week is gone and the responsibilities are gone. So the next thing you worry about is your health. You know what I mean? And connection is one of the things that plays a big role in your health. And so it's a sense of purpose that people like to find. And then loneliness happens at any time. Like I always talk, my dad's biggest fear is like the day where my brother and I don't feel like we need him. We will always need him. He who knows that. But kids don't probably communicate that with their parents as frequently as maybe they'd like to hear. And that's something that I'm particularly vocal about. Is we always need each other. Like you will always have a responsibility at whatever age, either to your family or to your community, like into the world. And so I think holding that, like just reminding yourself that maybe it's not all the time or as regular as that you needed to when you were younger in your 40s and 50s, but it's still there. Like it's just, you're there when needed. And that's a hard concept for a lot of old people to understand because I speak to them about it all the time.
Yes.
But that's the beauty of having these teenagers and these people in their 20s talking to these dads that have kids in their 30s and 40s, because they can provide the advice. Like if these kids don't have parental figures that they can lean on, this is what they're here for.
Yes, I think that's very true.
Yeah,
that's very true. And I often joke about the fact, it's not really joke about it, but it's the fact that some of my best friends are around 5 or 6 years old. And then I know people who well into their 80s that I interact with. And I get as much joy from talking to the 5-year-olds as I do from talking to the 80-year-olds. And of course, I'm somewhere in between. I still think of myself as a teenager. But one of the things we talked about maybe about 12 months ago or something, that, this idea of what walk with me we should try in Pakistan. And as you know, we've had several walks now. We've had, let's say, modest response, a lot of interest. We've just not been able to get as many people as we would like, but hopefully in this year, 2026, we will have several more walks. We've had people, coming from, one gentleman who's come to our walk took a bus for 2.5 hours just to come to the first walk that we did. And he told us it was such a great initiative. So we've had very positive feedback. And, we'll do our best to make it more successful. But what are some of the things do you think we need to focus on just to make sure we build a similar community like you have here in Canberra?
I think frequency is a big thing in regards to like your cadence of when you can join things. I think being too accessible, people take it for granted, but having a nice space between, like something to look forward to, is always hard to figure out what that cadence looks like. But I think like fortnightly to monthly walks works the best because people can put in their diaries, it's planned. And then as each walk grows, interest grows, the referrals increase. But I think it's one thing I've learned is working with businesses that you align with, that you get on with the owners with, and like you have a shared interest of bringing people together. And also you want the business owners to build a relationship with the community, because ultimately, like, we need someone, we need a doctor, we need a dentist, we need an accountant, we want a physio, we want someone to help, like an interior designer. And the best way to build those relationships is not through like Googling. It's like word of mouth and trust.
Yes.
And that's been a huge thing for us, especially developing. We've worked with some really wonderful people that have helped us grow the charity in that sense, in alignment, because there's been buying of, you believe in us, we love the product and service. Why can't everyone just be tunneled down towards you? And it's worked really well like that. And I think it's a big thing is collaboration is a really important thing. It's hard to be like the solo star and just keep everything in house, because what happens is you come off as a bit possessive, whereas collaboration is really important because people want to know that you want them to succeed too. And it's easy to work with people where you can feel the support. And we as humans know like who supports us and who doesn't. Everything can look great online, but if it's ugly behind closed doors, like people will find out sooner or later. It's just that's what happens, because you see how people act. Like people will do anything for people they like. The bare minimum for other people.
So sorry, Zak. Before we conclude, one thing that we always do in this podcast, and you're a young person. Most of our guests are a little bit older, but Pakistan has a very young population. It's one of the youngest populations in the world. 50% of our population is under the age of 30. And which is pretty much your own demographic. Give some, and I know nobody has all the answers, and I know we're all finding ourselves, even at this stage, I'm still finding myself. But give a couple of practical ideas and advice for young people who may be just starting their careers, thinking about education or what they want to achieve out of life? What is it that you could offer by way of guidance, advice, and so on?
Speaking from personal experience, and you would know this, I worked for you.
Yes.
Working with people was my strength, as opposed to solving problems on paper or analyzing numbers and spitting numbers out and using software. That's never been my skill. My skill has always been like problem solving with people and finding a way to bring them together or like help them succeed in what it is that they wanted to do. The hard thing is, like you said, there's no book to help you define your career. You shape your career through your actions and essentially like who you are as a human being. And one thing I've learned is that I didn't think what I'm doing now was a potential job when I was growing up, because A, I didn't have the confidence, and B, no one had really done it. And also, usually you kind of discount what you're good at because you think if I'm good at it, everyone else is good at it. And so I got pushed from certain people to pursue a certain path, which was in the form of coaching and charities. And so I just made it work. And by making it work is I did what I felt was right. And the thing is, no one knows anything else than the textbook. So when you try something for the first time, you got to be comfortable with the idea that no one's going to understand what you're trying to do. And if you don't articulate it properly, you can't expect people to be upset by that. So I think having growing confidence of having a great support network, but also like, you know what you're good at. Everyone's good at something. Like, I know people all the time that are good at something they're not willing to try. But if I'd always say, if I had your skills, I would. And you've just got to be, I don't believe in toxic positivity, but I believe in realism, but also you're allowed to be optimistic. Because if you're optimistic, there's something in your gut telling you that you can be positive about this, and you can't let anything tell you otherwise. If no one else is getting that feeling, they don't need to get that feeling.
So a couple of big takeaways, if I could summarize. One is figure out what you're good at. I mean, we're all going to be good at something. And the second thing is, be optimistic. While yes, positive thinking and stuff, everyone says is a little bit overrated, but especially in countries where the environment is a little bit more competitive and tough, you need to be optimistic. You do have a lot of rejections and so on, but you need to pick yourself up. So remain optimistic and focus on your strengths, like you said. Well, Zak, one more thing before we go. You've talked a lot about your parents, and I'd like to give a shout out to your parents. They're wonderful people, and I think they've certainly, taught you a lot about life and about business and values and stuff, and all of that seems to be helping you in your business. So would you like to just say something directly to your parents through this podcast?
Mum and Dad, thank you for putting up with me. That's the number one. They'll understand that. And secondly, thanks for all the support. I'm very lucky to have parents like them. I don't think many people have parents, even like yourself and Tina. So
thank you.
I'm very fortunate to be around people like that, and especially my parents.
It's wonderful
their values impressed me.
Wonderful to have had you on this podcast, Zak, and I've enjoyed the time we spent together on this trip to Australia, and look forward to seeing you, if not before I go, then on the next trip. And we'll remain in touch, and we'll keep you posted on the progress of Walk With Me Pakistan.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zak. Take care. Bye.